as Americans go to the polls to elect either a new president or elongate the tenure of the incumbent, the country's cosmopolitan population makeup is once again the subject of intense public discourse across the world. A substantial portion of this motley population are people of African descent, and even Africans in the diaspora, a lot of them bearing the American passport and more than qualified to cast their votes. On the mother continent itself, individuals and governments are taking more than a passing interest in the elections because of long-standing socio-political, economic, cultural, and diplomatic ties with the United States. Nigeria has been a major part of this milieu right from the early days of her independence in the 1960s. We'll be speaking with Ambassador Joe Keshi, a former Consular General at the Nigerian Mission in Washington, and amongst other things, we'll be asking him about how Nigeria, and indeed Africa as a continent, should prepare for the outcome of the U.S. elections, whatever it is. Good morning, Ambassador.
Good morning, Ambassador
Good
Keshi.
morning. Good morning, all, and thanks for having me.
Good morning, sir. Good
Good
to
morning.
see you. Yes. Quickly, U.S. election
Good to
today.
see you, Ruben.
Thank you, sir. Today is U.S. presidential and general elections. Now, how important is that election to the rest of the world, considering the fact that across Africa and elsewhere, and even here in Nigeria, there are persons who have taken a key interest in that election? And I ask that question because you were quoted in one interview as having said Nigeria and U.S. are not necessarily strategic partners, but nonetheless, the entire world is interested in this election. Why is that so, and what are the strategic issues involved?
Well, obviously, the world is interested in this election more because of the fact that up till 4 years ago, America was considered the leader of the free world. But under the current president, a lot has changed to the extent that traditional allies of the United States, for example, have tried as much as they can to stay out of Donald Trump's way, while he embraces dictators around the world. I also think that the world is looking at the possibility that we could return to normalcy in terms of diplomatic arrangements, because the construction, the peace that came about in 1945, I think, after the Second World War, and the construction of the global environment that the Americans led, almost gone, and everybody's anxious that a bit of it should be returned for the sake of the world, and actually also for the sake of the Americans themselves.
Indeed, people are anxious to go back to the world as we knew it before COVID, before some of the upheavals that you referred to. But let's look at a topical issue and the fact that America is proving or attempting to prove as an impediment to the nomination of Nigeria's Dr. Ngozi Okonjo-Iweala as the first African and the first woman Director General of the World Trade Organization. We just read a report this morning about how COVID-19 lockdown measures in Geneva might delay her vote, and that the WTO is trying to see whether or not Trump can clinch a second term and how that would determine Dr. Okonjo-Iweala's fortunes. I'd like your comments on all of that, sir.
There are so many things in play here, not just the election going on in WTO. Climate change is at stake. There are so many unresolved global issues that under Trump has just been ignored. The Iranian arms deal, it's one. Relationship with allies, as I said, have collapsed. Tension between the United States and Russia, and China has really, have really gone up. So when you put all these issues together, you can begin to see why the world is actually anxious to correct the mistake they believe that was made in 2016. And by the way, it's not just the world that is anxious to make that correction. The Democrats are anxious to, to correct the mistakes they made in 2016. So virtually everybody. But with respect to the election and of our dear lady, again, it's been affected by coronavirus, and this is part of, the problem that today, in terms of global coalition to fight the coronavirus, COVID-19, there's no leadership. There's no leadership. Immediately, the United States withdrew from World Health Organization. The organization is struggling on its own as much as it can, but these and many other institutions, as I said earlier, were what was created and led by the United States around 1945 at the end of the World War, But here they are all virtually, without leadership. So this is an extraordinary election. Again, as you guys have said, everybody is interested in the election, and they are hoping that it will go the way they want it to go. I mean, I don't hide it. I keep telling everybody that I'm in prayers for Joe Biden to win so that we can return to normal and the traditional global institutions can be rebuilt for the sake of the world.
I mean, I just want to ask you, how do you think America can reunite itself? Because when you look at the antecedents of the New World Order we have, when you plot it historically, America attempted this after the First World War with Woodrow Wilson and the League of Nations. We saw the collapse of that snowball in the Second World War, then Bretton Woods institution and making the peace after the Second World War. They finally got it right, and the New World Order we have, and the 70s with the likes of Kissinger and the rest. How can America, re-engineer itself in a world that is looking like a Chinese world now?
No, I think with a credible leadership, with a focused leadership, with a leader that is all-embracing, that reaches out to the allies and have a plan to really, bring the Chinese on board one way or the other, I think we can return to normal. What has been missing in the last 4 years is the chaotic behavior of the current president of the United States in almost every diplomatic engagement he has been involved in. I mean, today, for example, apart from some of the agreements being signed between Israel and a number of Arab countries, and by the way, those agreements, good as it is, almost all those countries they are signing agreements with never went to war with Israel to start with. So I think that once you have a leader that understands, the problem is, and as Obama said, the problem is that Donald Trump actually never grew into the job to understand the implication of some of his actions. And that shows clearly in a number of things that he has done. For him, I think, and he continues to show that, for him, I think, all days, it's about television rating, it's about showmanship and so on. But this is a serious business. Leading a country like the United States is a serious business. You can't get up one morning and destroy a relationship with your allies and friends that has lasted over, 50 years. It's almost impossible. So I think that if the Democrats win and Joe Biden win, he's been a strong internationalist. I expect that he will do the best he can to restore Americans' leadership in the world. And that is very important to everybody.
Well, Ambassador Keshi, you've made a very strong case for Joe Biden, Vice President Joe Biden. But what are those special qualities that gives you the assurance that a Biden presidency will be much better in terms of response to multilateralism, international relations, and all of that? And then the obverse of that is that suppose Trump wins again at the end of the day, would that be a disaster for multilateralism or even for America, in your estimation?
It will be a disaster for everybody. It will be a disaster for everybody. We should not contemplate that. But look, he's surging at the polls at this point in time, and he's hoping to repeat what he did, almost 4 years ago. But the good thing now is that unlike 4 years ago, when Hillary and the Democrats did not campaign in some key Democratic states, they've done reasonably well this year. But to your question, really, look, Biden has been in this business for many years. He served as vice president under Obama. He served in the Judicial Committee of the Senate. He has served in the Foreign Committee of the Senate. He has served in the Intelligence Committee of the Senate. So he comes in with experience, solid experience of how the United States should work and how the United States should relate to its allies. So we can rest be guaranteed, we can be assured rather that under his leadership, certainly considerable efforts will be made to restore American leadership in the world. A lot of efforts will be made to normalize relations with allies, bring allies on the, on table, and to begin to see how they can address some of the problems of the world that Donald Trump has actually shown no interest in addressing. But as we all know, spend more time embracing dictators and hoping to make a deal with them. And as of today, he has nothing more to show for that. You just have to look at the history of Joe Biden in his days as a member of Senate and also as VP to President Obama. That should give us the assurance that we have a guy that is coming to office with tremendous amount of experience, with tremendous amount of the world as we know it today, and the fact that he will do the best he can to restore normalcy. And I think that's what we need to start with, to restore normalcy and for us to begin to conduct, diplomacy as we know it. Look, a situation where your allies are even too scared to want to reach out to you, or they clearly avoid you, as in the case of the German lady all the time. It's like a nightmare for her to, in any meeting that involves Donald Trump. That is not good enough, because Germany is a strong ally of the United States. But here, see the way Germany has been treated in the last 3 years plus. So I'm very confident that Joe Biden will restore a lot of, not just the leadership, but would definitely, and look, he has given us the impression that they will go back, for example, to they will return to the Paris Club. We can be rest assured that they will return to the World Health Organization. So that's a good indication that we're going to return to normalcy if we do have a new U.S. president, and it is Joe Biden.
But to what extent did normalcy serve us in Africa? Because obviously Biden was President Obama's vice president, and Obama's foreign policy did leave quite a bit to be desired. When it comes to the handling of the Arab Spring, nature abhors a vacuum, and as it turns out, so do violent extremists who filled that power vacuum, and we see the consequences in Nigeria today. What's your comments on that?
The way I look at problems like that in response to your question is that we sometimes want to transfer our own problems to others. If you have violent reactions in Arab countries that led to the Arab Spring, you can't put it on the Americans. If you have violent reactions in Nigeria as a result of a number of factors in this country, you can't put it on the Americans, and you can't expect the Americans to come and solve your problems. I make this point all the time that, look, we should stop acting as if we do not know what to do. We should stop acting as if we are a child without direction. Nobody will come to Nigeria to take up your problems and begin to resolve them. Nigerians must learn to resolve their own problems. Pure and simple, just like the rest of the world. They can't do everything. No, yes, but the Americans would get involved in it.
Ambassador, President Obama names the aftermath of Syria as his worst mistake. Not Syria, Libya. No, the ousting of Gaddafi.
The Americans will get involved in any part of the world when they perceive a threat to their national interest. Let's understand that. But they will not take over your problems and begin to resolve them. In case of Libya, you know, of course, that all Americans did was to provide the Air Force because the Europeans invited the Americans into the game. Pure and simple. So we have to learn to take care of our problems and don't think anybody will come and solve it for us.
And in the case of Libya, the long-drawn fight over the Lockerbie incidents too still stands, and Abdul Basit Al-Maghrabi. But I move on to a couple of questions. Why do you think, or do you think Biden will be fourth time lucky? Because the first time Biden tried his house out of the presidency was actually 1984. You know, the Democratic candidate that finally emerged that year was Walter Mondale, but he had one ballot, just one vote cast for him at the party convention. He tried out in 88 again, he tried out in 08 again, and this is his fourth time. And secondly, recently we saw, you know, Nigeria giving support to America, a naval SEAL team that came to rescue an American hostage. Does that mean that we can, you know, partner with America as regards security issues now? And can that also help segue into a hunt to release some of people held captives, you know, the Dapchi and Chibok girls and the likes?
I do not know whether you remember the case of the former president of Senegal. I'm trying to remember his name now. He started contesting for the presidency at the age... No, not Macky Sall, the former president.
Abdoulaye Wade.
Contesting for election at the
Abdoulaye
age of... Yes, Abdoulaye Wade. Thank you very much. He started contesting for election for the presidency at the age of 27. And he made it, I think, when he was close to 70 or over 70. Here in Nigeria, we have President Buhari, who has contested 4 times and eventually made it. So that's one of the reasons why I believe that, who knows, maybe this is Joe Biden's time. And secondly, the polls have been remarkably stable. This is the first time I think I can remember the U.S. polls have been remarkably stable, but the ghost of 2016, is still with us. So we just really, we need to put our enthusiasm at check. But to the question of the recent cooperation between the United States and, again, it's just what I've just said. The United States will act when it is in its best interest, okay? If they actually, and that's one of the reasons why, among other reasons that I've given when I say to everybody, we have a very cordial relationship with the United States, but let's stop deceiving ourselves to believe that we are strategic partners. When you look at the strategic, in terms of being strategic, you cannot compare Egypt to Nigeria in terms of relationship with the United States. You cannot compare Israel in terms of relationship with the United States. You cannot compare South Korea, which is what is affecting the election of Ngozi with the United States. So we just must admit we have a good relationship with the United States. But when it comes to that word strategic, I'm a little bit cautious in using that, that word to start with.
Well, one of the concerns of African observers is that this year's presidential election in the U.S. looks very much like an African election. We've had fears being expressed about the likelihood of rigging. We have seen violence on the streets of the United States between supporters. We've had allegations of voter fraud, food being distributed, what Nigerians have been laughing at as stomach infrastructure in the U.S. Presidential election. But in spite of all of that, are there lessons that Nigerians can learn from the process that we have witnessed so far?
Ruben, to answer that question, let me say that I don't know how many times I've told my wife, when we're arguing or watching the television, arguing this, I don't know how many times I said to my wife that I'm actually disappointed with African leaders or the AU in particular. That this gives us a very good opportunity to tell the United States to behave. Because anytime we have election in any part of Africa, you have the Americans rushing up to tell us how to behave. Because they believe they are the leaders in terms of democracy and they set the standard. But today, it's almost impossible to believe that that same America is behaving the way they are behaving, like a third world country when it comes to election. And we are just quiet instead of reminding them, taking the opportunity to say to them, look, you guys, remember you are, in terms of democracy, you are the leaders. So we expect that you should behave, and we are concerned about what's going on in the United States, because if it was happening anywhere in Africa, I'm sure the secretaries of states or one or two emissaries would have landed on our shores to tell us how to behave. And we have an opportunity to tell America to behave. And we just, we're not saying anything. But that said, I just want to again say in answer to your question that I'm not too sure that let me put it this way. There are lessons to be learned in everything. But I'm doubtful whether we care to learn lessons about anything at all. Number one, remember we virtually copied Constitution from the United States, but we didn't come in also with a discipline to make it work the way it should work. But when you look at the way the campaigns have gone, never mind the ups and downs and the behavior of some crazy Republicans, there's a lot to be said about the U.S. system that we can begin to look into. Expose the candidates. Stop allowing one godfather or the other to dictate the pace. Let everybody go out and campaign. Let's come up with a system that can throw up good candidates. Not, we are still practicing what the politicians did decades ago. Candidates are selected in a smoke-filled room. So today, a party leader can decide who gets to get a vote. The approval to run or not to run, and the rest of it. There are so many things we can actually learn. The way they do things, the way the candidates themselves behave, and the fact that no matter what you can say about what has gone on this year, it is still a competitive race. Look, I couldn't believe, for example, that a black man would get up to face North Carolina senator, it's difficult to believe, but here he is. He's not doing too well in the polls, but we see what happens by this time tomorrow. So the fact is, there's a lot we can learn if we are prepared to learn, but I'm not too sure how serious we are about learning anything. We are accustomed to the way we do things, and I don't see much changes, regrettably true.
Well, sir, we'll take a short break now and take a sort of the campaigns by both presidential candidates, and after that, the conversation will continue. Please stay with us.
We've been under a phony, fake, hoax investigation for 3 years. Nothing but bad and really corrupt publicity from these people. And I say, I wonder what the difference would have been had it been legit, right? Had it been legit. And it turned out to be just the opposite. They were the ones that committed the crimes, not us. But I wonder what it would have been. I probably would have been a little bit easier, but the good news, we're going to win anyway. We're going to shove it. And I have like 5 of these to do today, so let's get going. And I appreciate you being here. We had some monsters last night. We had some little rough weather. It wasn't like this. We had, in Michigan, we had a slightly cold day, with the wind blowing at 40 miles an hour in my face, and you're lucky you have a president that doesn't need a teleprompter. I was able to good memory. Out and vote, that's all I ask. Just take a little time and vote. Vote, we got to win this state. I think we win this state, we win Pennsylvania. We're going to win Florida, we win Pennsylvania, and we're going to win the whole thing. We're going to win the whole thing. And we'll send them a signal like they've never seen before. And now we'll have a chance to do it without the cloud, because I had a cloud hanging over my head, whether we like it or not. And then they say, he was tough. He fought too hard. He was somewhat crude. He was very, very nasty. his Twitter. Now, you know what? If I didn't have social media, I wouldn't be here. It was the only way I could defend myself. Proud citizens like you help build this country, and together we are taking back our country. We are returning power to you, the American people. With your help, your devotion, and your drive, we are going to keep on working. We are going to keep on fighting. We are going to keep on winning, winning, winning.
America's facing a confluence of crises unlike anything in living memory. We're still in the battle for the soul of America. Decency, honor, respect. Where has it gone with this president? But let me tell you something, folks. Tomorrow's the beginning of a new day. And last night, Trump went on to say he was going to fire Dr. Fauci. Well, I've got a better idea. Let's fire Trump and I'll hire Fauci. Think about it. Look, Donald Trump has waved the white flag of surrender. Remember, he said, I'm the commander-in-chief and I'm going to fight this fight. Give me a break. He waved the white flag of surrender. I'll never surrender. We're going to beat this virus. We're going to get it under control. And the first step to beating this virus is beating Donald Trump. Trump likes to portray himself as a tough guy, the macho man. Wouldn't you like to have a shot? Anyway, the macho man. When's the last time, and he says people listen to him because he's tough around the world. When's the last time you ever heard of a president of the United States literally being laughed at out loud by world leaders when he spoke at the United Nations? So much for listening to him. When's the last time a president of the United States met with the NATO leaders at the NATO summit? Other world leaders, chancellors, presidents, prime ministers. And before they realized it, they were all making fun of him as he left the room. Folks, and can you believe we're a president who acts like Vladimir Putin's puppy? Putin had put bounties on the heads of American soldiers in Afghanistan, where I've been to many times. It's a rough area, man. But Trump has talked to him 6 times since then, and he's been frightened to say or challenge him at all. Donald Trump isn't strong, he's weak.
Thank you for staying with us, Ambassador Joe Keshi. I want to start off where Joe Biden left off, Donald Trump's embrace of autocrats, which a lot of people found quite disturbing, and his antagonistic posture towards traditional American allies, like you mentioned earlier, like NATO, when he threatened NATO funding. And that brings me to the theme of this election, in spite of all Donald Trump's best efforts, COVID-19. And his quit notice that Donald Trump served to the WHO. Can we discuss the implications of that for world public health in the middle of a pandemic, seeing as the United States is responsible for 15% of WHO's budget and 29% of voluntary contributions by member states, and the effect that it's had, for example, on polio eradication in a country like Nigeria?
You have to understand how Donald Trump operates. Donald Trump's withdrawal from WHO was nothing more than part of his inability to accept responsibility for his own failures, but to look for a scapegoat. He started by wanting to blame China you know, for this. And when apparently that doesn't look as if it was working, he found another scapegoat in terms of WHO. I'm not saying that WHO is completely innocent, but he found someone to blame. And as far as he was concerned, you know, I believe in his mind that he thought that if he cascades the blame up, Americans will not hold him responsible for his failure to do the needful to control the pandemics in the United States, but will focus attention on China and, you know, WHO. And that's why I'm confident that a new president would have no difficulties at all returning to WHO, because WHO, as of today, is working with a number of firms around the world to find a vaccine, you know, and there's no doubt that we need American support in terms of the finances and the rest. And you talked of dictators, and that is also very true. It's still difficult for most people to understand why Donald Trump from day one simply embraced dictators and decided to do away with its allies. And by the way, you know, some of the problems with NATO, they've been on the table, they've been discussions, they've been an agreement that countries like Germany, the rest, are going to up their contributions to NATO. And they had actually started, you know, increasing their contributions or the percentage they were asked to pay before Donald Trump came to office. But the way he behaves was like, no, if you don't pay by a certain date, forget it. America is not interested in doing business with you. And this has all gone down well with the allies. And this is characteristics of Donald Trump's behavior. And for the world, that's not how leaders should behave. And that's not how the leader of the free world is expected to behave. There's been a lot of disappointment around the world, but be that as it may, this is an extraordinary election, and everybody's just waiting for tomorrow when the results start coming in.
All right. What would you make of Donald Trump's sort of like the art of the deal diplomacy? And I'll give you an instance. Recently, what he did, he sort of like struck a business deal of some sort with Sudan to take their name off American terrorists. That didn't come cheap. $322 billion US dollars was said to be compensation, you know, for people that were killed by, you know, affiliations with the Sudanese government and things like that. Also, another instance is the GCPOA that Obama and John Kerry, Secretary of State Kerry then, fought so hard to get to be able to quell the tensions as regards the Iran nuclear crisis. But Trump came in and turned it all around because, I mean, things are not favoring him. Another one, for good measure, is the COVAX alliance that will help small countries, you know, and countries that don't have the money to get vaccines to fight COVID-19. Trump says, I'm not part of it. I'll do my own deal with Pfizer and Eli Lilly and Moderna, and they'll get me vaccines by November. That's the kind of diplomacy we're seeing from the leader of the free world. What's your take on this?
I guess that's why the world is anxiously waiting for the results of the election. You know, all the issues you've enumerated, you know, they're on the table, they're on the line. The Iranian deal, for example, and the TTP with
TTP
Southern Asia, that was, yes, you know, that was being worked on. The main reason why Trump, look, part of Trump's obsession remains to arbitrate whatever Obama did in office. That, of course, includes the Obama health care, the Affordable Care Program, you know, the Iranian deal. Look, no deal is perfect in the world. But the most important thing is when you begin to make it work, whatever challenges you face, you all meet again and you decide to resolve the new challenges along the way. But for him, all he wanted to do was to arbitrate whatever Obama did in office. Pure and simple. Because from day one, he has this aversion against President Obama. And he, in fact, to be candid, you know, racism has always been in the United States. It has not gone away. What happened over the last few years or decades is that it was an issue discussed, you know, in the sitting room, bedrooms, and the rest of it. But outside those places, Americans try to behave that racism has disappeared. But Donald Trump brought it to the forefront again when he started to dispute, you know, the birth of where President Obama was born. And that was like a signal to everybody. You can discuss it openly, whether, you know, you can discuss racism openly. You can actually bring it on board. Let's have it. And this is why some people describe him as a racist to start with. And you can see his action. Look at the number, over 200 and something judges appointed by Trump. Not one single one is black. In a country like the United States, I mean, it's unbelievable. This has never happened before. So really, you can begin to see why, you know, there's some anxiety about this about this election, not just among those who want Trump, but even among Republicans who genuinely feel that Trump has been a disaster for the United States.
Ambassador Keshi, it looks like Africans are watching this election with a lot of interest, but also with a lot of trepidation, considering the big issues on the table that relate to African interest. Sudan, Ethiopia and the dam, WHO, WTO, China, aid, and bilateral relations. But is it possible, is it the case that African leaders and Africans generally are making false assumptions about the possibility of a democratic president being friendlier towards Africa?
To a large extent, you are right. It's a false assumption because American foreign policy, like most foreign policy, is relatively stable. What happens is that changes occur due to the personalities that are leading the country at that given time. So in the case of Trump, now he's the president, he has not shown much interest really in Africa, except there are some transactions to be made. But the truth, I mean, I still believe that, look, I'm not too sure. The last time I checked, and this is months ago, for all the years he's been in office, I'm not too sure that Trump appointed anybody to the crucial post of Undersecretary for African Affairs in the State Department. The fact that the fact that nobody was appointed for a number of years just shows you Trump's mindset towards the continent itself. That's not his interest. Precisely, that's not his interest. So we can only look forward that a new president, if he does occur, will be more sympathetic and will look at the issues involving Africa with some understanding. I won't use the word sympathy, but with some understanding, and where necessary, have to resolve some of these issues. You mentioned Sudan. Sudan got into this deal because of its own interest to start with. Sudan needs a lot of help and assistance to be able to get up to date from where it is. And that's the honest truth. And if it has to make a deal, Sudan has never fought a war with Israel to start with. We must bear this in mind, neither UAR and the rest. But they need to maintain relationship because of their own expanding economy and the rest of it. And I guess everybody is just tired of the Middle East crisis involving the Palestinians and the Israelis. And for most people, they must find a way out of it or one way or the other. And that's what we are seeing happening now as, you know. And Trump also, look, for a man who has been in office for almost 4 years, with no deal, international deal to his credit, this last-minute effort, I guess, was undertaken to enhance his election.
Thank you, Ambassador. As we draw to a close, let's take a look at the down-ballot elections. The Democrats are expected to retain control of the House, but it's possible that the Democrats could have a takeover of the Senate. How would that affect U.S. policy, given that some of the key oversight committees really do oversee nominations, treaties, and what have you? How would that affect us in Africa?
Oh, look, I think I don't think it will affect us much, but I think the good news for me is that there are a number of Nigerian-born Americans that are running both for I don't think anybody is running for the Senate, but I think some are running for the House, some are running for the state, congresses. For us, that's where to start from. If we can begin, when I was in Atlanta a couple of years ago, and anytime I speak to Nigerian in the diaspora, I did point out that they should get involved in the politics of the United States. That is one way they can actually help us as they grow into new positions, that they can be of significant assistance to the continent. And I see that there are about a couple of 27 people or so, in the race. If they win, at least we have a voice. We have people that we can relate with. We have a contact that will understand us better and will be able to push up our issues one way or the other. But if the Democrats win both the House and both the Senate, I can assure you that we will be in good stand, because there are quite a number of Democrats that are very sympathetic and have a very good relationship with the African Americans of African descent today, and as well as some have very close relationship with the Nigerian community in the United States, and they are running for re-election. So I see a situation whereby it will be some gain for us if the Democrats control the House and also control the Senate. And it would even be better if they control the White House.
Well, thank you very much, Ambassador Joe Keshi, for joining us on the morning show.